Welcome back to Give Black, Give Back Conversations, Changemaker Edition. I am Kia Jarman, co-chair of Give Black, Give Back. And before we get into our Changemaker for today, our person to watch, our person to follow, the trailblazer, I want to share a little bit more about Give Black, Give Back. In collaboration with the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, we have a three-part mission. First, we amplify the Black-led, Black-endowed funds housed at the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. Second, we support the Black-led nonprofits who support our thriving community. And third, we serve as an education and resource for the general community on the racial wealth gap and how to sustain your philanthropic initiative. So, today I have the distinct pleasure of sitting with my friend, Mignon Francois of the Cupcake collection. I have known Mignon a very long time, and I'm so excited that we're here today to have a conversation with her. Let me pass it over to Lisa Swift-Young, our co-chair, to do a brief intro. Sorry, Lisa, for throwing you on out there. To do a brief intro just of our conversation today, and then I'll kick it off with Mignon to get us started.
I'm excited to have you sitting on my porch. As we can hear the birds chirping and things like that. I remember when this porch was not an inviting place to be. And when I wanted to start the Cupcake collection, my first dream for it was to raise up that window right there. And that was going to be the serving place. That was the extent of what I thought this was going to be, just a window on my porch, some wares that I sold that my daughters were going to make after school every day, and I would sell them. And God had a bigger dream for me than I dreamed for myself, and that has been my journey to where we are right now. That whatever I put my hand to do, when I put my hand to do that authentically and fully, it turns into so much more than I ever imagined it could be. When we first announced that we were going to New Orleans with a store, I didn't even know I was going to be announcing it on that day, but it came out in the paper because I just happened to be so passionately talking about it. And I said, okay, well, I guess today is the day, and I guess we really are going. And I feel like I've always been that kind of person who says, well, if I said I'm going to do it, I have to do it fully. And so it was these neighbors, as they were building these townhouses along here, that I was baking cupcakes for. And I would decorate them like little bushes and knock on their door, to which they'd be afraid to open the door and respond. Because I gave at the office, I don't want any, get away from my door. But I'm like, I came to bring you something. And they, in turn, began to knock on my door and ask me for something. And now we've become a staple in the neighborhood, and we believe that you can't tell the story of current, present-day Germantown without saying the Cupcake collection in it. Because before we started it, they said no one's ever coming here to stand online for anything gourmet, in line, period, in Germantown. And we changed the narrative about that, and we feel really proud of what's grown up around us, and we feel responsible for it.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. You kind of alluded to a couple of times what Give Black, Give Back is all about, right? Giving. Mm-hmm. And so you started off giving, and that was sort of your way to sort of do that. And so that is the African American experience, right? So
yeah.
Our experience all the time. So
I have to interrupt you. You just really quicken something in my spirit. Okay. I never recognized that. Yeah. I never recognized that I started off being what I already am. Right. I was just being me, and that came back to serve me. I didn't know that this was going to happen. Right. I was just being me. That was so good. Thank you. Thank you for that.
It's ancestral. It's just who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, just who we are.
That's our experience. And so it just talks a little bit about, we talk about the $11 billion that African Americans give every year mm-hmm. to charitable donations. And mm-hmm. we talk about that piece. And so one of the things about Changemakers is these people are doing things exactly like you're doing, mm-hmm. giving, doing just being themselves, and how much that enriches the community. So mm-hmm. if you can remember back, since you're a giver, uh-huh. can you give me a story, the first story you remember about giving and what that experience was like?
Yeah, I've been wrecking my brain about my best giving experience, and that's really hard because I think, just like you saw just now, I don't remember necessarily the moments that I've given because it's not for my own edification, right? I'm doing things just being, but I can tell you the most influential giving experience I've ever had. And so I find that the significance of my life happens in fives. So I'm about 5 years old when this happens, and we're living in Denver, Colorado, and it's Saturday, and we've just come home from church. Now, my mother's been paid yesterday on Friday, and she has no more money. We catch the bus to church, and a family friend who becomes like an aunt to us, later literally becomes a relative of our family, drives us home. And my mom had left some red beans on the stove and cornbread. And for those who followed the Cupcake collection, they've known that red beans and rice was a staple here on Mondays. It's our culture from New Orleans. And so my mom had left some red beans in a crock pot and made us some cornbread, and the red beans weren't ready. They were still hard. And she had been cooking those red beans for 2 days, and they were still hard. So we didn't want to have hard beans. And so we complained as we ate the cornbread. But my mom had gone downstairs. I remember this day vividly. I could tell you what the peach floral bedspread that was really thin from wear that was on her bed in the basement. Now, her room in the basement was not really a room. It was the basement. And in New Orleans, we didn't have basements because we were below sea level. But here in Nashville, I've begun to experience basements again for the very first time. So it was cold down there and dark, and someone had knocked on the door, and so my mom's like, "Oh, you're interrupting my Saturday after church nap," and she didn't want to come up. But this was the second time her nap had been interrupted for the day, and it was one of her friends, and her name was Cora Mae Fishburn. And so it was Valentine's Day, like Valentine's Day weekend, and Miss Fishburn had said, "You know, it's Valentine's Day. I know that you have these kids in here, and I just wanted to wish you a happy Valentine's Day. And so I brought you a card." And so she said, "Please don't open it while I'm here because I'm going to be embarrassed. It's nothing. It's just a card. So don't make too much out of it." So they visited for a little while. I remember her sitting near the door, and my mother sitting on the piano bench, and she visited with her for a little while, and then she said goodbye, and they left. Well, you know what happens when somebody tells you don't open something? You're like ripping that. And so my mother ripped that card open, and there was a check and then 2 crisp, I think it were $50 bills in there. And so it was about, do you remember how much was in that check that I told that story? I think she had $250 or $300. It was $250 or $300 in there between a check and 2 large bills. Now this is about 1979. In today's arena, that's about $1,200 because I did the inflation marker to see what that would be. So for somebody to, in this day, walk up to your house and give you $1,200, as a single mom, you're floored. Especially, how did she know? How did she know I needed this? So we didn't have a phone. Our phone was disconnected. And so my mom couldn't thank her. But what she did do was get us some pizza.
Okay.
So we had pizza that day. And my mom told me the story that as soon as she got to work, she went to call Miss Fishburn and say, "How am I ever going to repay you?" And she said, "You're not repaying me. You're not going to block my blessings." Okay. And so my mom didn't know how she was ever going to pay her, but it was that blessing that got us through the week. And when my mother didn't have anything, not even enough bus fare to get us back home on that day. And it just reminds me that God supplies your needs according to his riches and according to who he knows, not you. And from then on, I've never forgotten it. I was 5. Never forgotten it. And as a result, I've wanted to be like Cora Mae Fishburn. So while my mother is my hero, you know, my grandmother is my hero, if you ever ask me who I've wanted to pattern my life after, I want to pattern my life behind a woman who I've never met again, as far as I know. And she has been so impactful in my life. I've just wanted to be able to follow that spirit and just say, you know, I was thinking about you, didn't know what you needed. But my mother said to her that day on the phone, how did you know? She said, I tried to call you and check on you and your phone was off. And I knew that you had those 3 babies in there. And I just thought maybe you needed something. And I think that has been the driving factor for me. You don't have to know what somebody needs. They don't have to tell you, tell you their business. Me and my daughter-in-law were talking about this yesterday. Does faith require privacy? You know, because if you keep your situations to yourself, does that stop other people from blessing you? It doesn't. Because sometimes you just have to go on what you feel, even if there is no evidence that there's a need. And so that's my favorite giving experience.
That's awesome. That's an amazing story. And I think it's always those people that touch you that they don't necessarily know. We're always looking for that big, that big check, that type of thing. And so in our community, that's not how it's done. Like those stories, from her really impacted the way that you literally created your life. And why the Cupcake Collection is here, because you were able to take that and give, not knowing if or what you were going to get back.
Yeah.
So
those people came knocking on my door. After I gave something to them, they came knocking on my door asking, could they give something to me? And that was money. Like, can I give you money for more of that? And I'm like, you really liked it? That was good.
Yes, I mean, we talk about the 5 T's of philanthropy: time, talent, treasure, truth, and testimony. So we're doing our truth and testimony now, which is where we share the truth of our life, of our legacy, and we share that testimony. We document it because often in our community, the stories are so oral that they happen and they change over time. And as we know how society works, they get revised. But let's talk a little bit. You've, of course, given your treasure to the community. You've talked about your talent, which actually wasn't your talent of baking. Let's really talk about it. It wasn't really your talent. It actually wasn't your talent. I think, again, if people Google the story, they will know, like, you can't bake out of a box.
Yeah. Still.
So it's so interesting how your talent has shown up. My giving story from you, before we even knew each other, many, many years ago, I was doing an event and we called up here to get some cupcakes, and you said, come at the end of the day and you can have what we have left. And so people ate those cupcakes. You didn't even know me at that time and probably don't even know the event.
I don't even know. Yeah, I didn't
don't even know the event. So you have baked goodness into our community and you've given in a lot of ways.
I'll take it.
Yes, absolutely. The next button, we bake goodness into every cupcake. Absolutely. I always got a tagline for you. But talk about that. What that legacy has looked like from Tennessee State University students who have worked here, who have gone on to be amazing, some of them still work here, to giving during homecoming, to opening in New Orleans and being so supportive of your hometown community. Talk a little bit more about how you've been able to spread joy in the work that you've been doing.
Yeah. So in New Orleans, my community there is jealous of my community here in Nashville, especially when it comes down to the work that we've done with TSU students, to the point that people think I went to TSU, that I'm an alumnus of TSU. I'm not. It's just that I was a student who needed my ends to meet. And if my ends didn't meet, I wasn't walking across the stage. But I had parents who were supportive of me, and my father sent the check to get that last bill met. I just was looking at supporting another foundation. The Kai Boulay is doing a Close the Gap gala. And I said, I need to be a part of this, because they are looking around all of the universities and saying, like, so many thousands of kids are being purged every year because they, have a bill that they can't pay. And sometimes it's $300. I almost didn't walk across the stage for $500. And so I just wanted to be able to offer a scholarship for that. It was one of my students who was working here. Her name was Shawn Montgomery. She was Miss Tennessee State University, and she came crying one day, and she's dramatic, and and I love it. But this day, it wasn't just because she was giving me theatrics, right? Because we were good together in that way. She was truly emotional about something. I was like, wait a minute, what is going on? What is really happening? And she said, I just finished speaking with some of the girls in one of the residence halls, and they were going to be purged. And she said, I have so much scholarship money available to me that I just want to go ask if I can give some of it away. And the fact that she wanted to give her scholarship money away because she had overflow made me say, well, if this child can give from her excess, then what can I do as an adult in this community? And so we raised money. We turned our red velvet cupcakes blue because that's what she wanted to do. She's to this day very much so a TSU Tiger, bleeding blue all the way in New Orleans, because she went back home to New Orleans. And we turned our red velvet cupcakes blue, and we're still turning them blue. I think it was at the beginning of the pandemic was our 10-year anniversary for that. And I can't believe we've been doing this now for 10 years, where we just try to support scholars by helping them make their ends meet. And now we want to extend that. So when I say they're jealous in New Orleans, well, can we get some of that at Xavier University? Because I went to Xavier University. And, so just now trying to, stretch that across the community. And be able to say, how can we serve you? Because it's not just Tennessee Tigers that are coming here. We have, students from everywhere. We're supported by Vanderbilt. We're supported by Fisk. We're supported by Meharry. We're supported by Trevecca. There are students everywhere. And, we're heavily supported by Lipscomb. And there are students in all of those universities that need some ends to meet. And so now we're exploring what is our greater responsibility. And I said in 2022, I wanted to give more than I've ever given. And so I put out this really big, crazy number that I'm not going to tell anybody yet. But
you got to say it. You got to say it to claim it, right?
Yeah, but I already said it. I'm just not going to say it on this camera. But, I've decided to do this big, crazy, amount that I don't know how we're going to do it. But I want to give so that others can experience what we've been able to experience.
Yeah, you already know how to do it. Because the message was operating in the overflow, right? And you've always done that, operated in the overflow. Sometimes of other people's overflow, because sometimes it wasn't even yours.
And the thing about it is the minute you go out there and start, then it just keeps on going. And that's what we found. It doesn't matter that you have everything you need. You just start where you are. And so that's what we've done. We're starting where we are. We're just trying to make an impact. And hopefully when we get those letters back from students who say, I graduated because of you, we'll know them. It'll be a personal relationship that we will know them by name, and they will know who we are, and they will know the sacrifice that we made for them.
That's good. You have given, so that is about legacy. I had a question about that, but I actually want to go someplace else right now. You also have a foundation for your family, and there's a farm that I don't think most people know about. And so how you're giving in that way, I just want to I want to learn more about the farm. I don't think people know about that. I haven't seen a lot in the press about that. But
Yeah.
I want to definitely make sure that that's something. And I know that's a family thing.
Yes.
Just give us a little information on it.
I'm very excited about Terrio Farms. So it's spelled The Riot because we're quite funny. But it's pronounced Terrio. And as the first board member to the family board, I'm very excited and feel very proud that my brother selected me to sit on his board. But now I'm pushing him in ways that he's always pushed me. And so the pandemic showed us that we were heavily relying on a food supply chain that would drop us and would leave us hungry. And in fact, food is a gift from God, that if you work the soil, you would receive it. And so he set out to learn about how the soil could give you a gift. And then once he began to learn about it, he wanted to teach other people about how they would never have to be hungry again. It was a redeeming of the time in the sense that we were enslaved as a people, but now you're enslaved to a system. And that system never has to enslave you ever again if you learn how to also work the soil. And so from one seed, so many other seeds exist. And that's metaphoric and it's actual, absolute. And so from that one seed, there's so many fruits that can grow. And it just reminds me of this Bible verse that I love, that if you remain in me and I am in you, then you will bear much fruit. And I think it also is a testament to the land. My brother has this saying, and I hope I get it right, because if I don't, he will be watching and he will murder me for this. He says that people don't care what you do. People care about how much you care. Yeah. And so being out in the community and caring for people, that they are hungry and that they never want to feel that again, was what Terrio Farms was built on. And so I'm really proud to carry this name. I think the greatest thing that people don't realize is that my generation is the first generation of African Americans with full access to opportunity. My mother didn't have the opportunity and access that we had. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, when we opened this Cupcake collection, my children were tasked to keep it a secret. And we were fully operational before she ever even knew that we had a bakery business. And remember, I can't bake out of a box, and so she was like, "You have a what? Where?" And she was fully interested and came quickly to see about this place that we were living in and operating a business out of. And I think there was a shift that happened, and I asked her to join the business. And I said, they call my mom Queen Bee. And so I said, you just need to understand there's only one queen in this castle. It is me. And, but we were blessed that she had just retired and she had worked executive level at a major insurance company my whole life. Mm-hmm. And so we got that level of expertise available to us. But then the generation that comes after me, which is my children, they're the first generation that has access to wealth transfer. Mm-hmm. So for the first time outside of insurance policies, we're giving land and businesses and wealth. Mm-hmm. And then their children's children, I believe, will be the first to have access to privilege. Mm-hmm. You can tell it by the way that, my little 7-year-old and the 10-year-old walks mm-hmm. around this place.
Any place his footsteps is yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's living out that Bible verse.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Every place your foot touches, you will own it. And they do walk around here with ownership. It was evident too. My father passed. We will celebrate a year this month that my father's been gone. So many people think the Cupcake collection came here as a result of Katrina because of my father. Because my father was doing the renovations along with the family on this property, and he was very charismatic. He did not meet a stranger. He had this big gigantic smile that I'm known for, I get it from my father. And he would be out here talking to people, and he tell them, I live in New Orleans, you know, and I think that's where the mix-up began, because we chose to live in Nashville a year before the storm. And so just interacting with my father and how Monell's came to the rescue for our family to feed them, as my father basically lived in this house to get it back together so it could be a place that we could operate out of and live. But my mother was telling us a story as we were preparing for his celebration of life service. And she said, I remember going with your dad one of my first times in the South, because my mother had never experienced racism before. She kind of grew up in that period, but she had never seen it. And she was, you know, the product of a biracial home, but to see her, you don't know that at all. And so she had, her mother was half white, half black, and her father was half black, half Indian. But they were just black people, right? And I think that was the time that they were living in. And so my mother grew up in a neighborhood where, you know, everybody took care of everybody. And so she had never seen racism until she came to the South when she married my father. And they moved down to New Orleans. And she remembered going, looking for my grandfather on the plantation. She said, Mignon, like, as I remember, back in the late 60s, we were looking for your grandfather on the plantation. That's where he was working. So then you find enslavement, even in the 70s, when it's my lifetime. And it floored me as we took a pilgrimage over to the Whitney Plantation. I feel like every person, black, white, green, yellow, purple, should go visit the Whitney Plantation. The Whitney Plantation shows enterprise in America and how the backs of people were used to build this country, and they were not considered human. And it shows the life of the enslaved. And they teach you that they are not slaves. They were the enslaved. They were people who were enslaved. And it really just helped me to change my vocabulary. And it was just a gift to be able to go and experience the Whitney Plantation. And as a matter of fact, our first black mayor in New Orleans, the Morial children, or Mark Morial, who, you know, has come to fame, you know, nationally, his family legacy comes out of the Whitney Plantation. And so I began to learn all about Mrs. Morial, who worked in the same building as my mother.
Wow.
And I got to meet her just after Leah Chase passed away, and we went over to her restaurant, and I got to sit at the head table with her and to talk to her. They were best friends. The whole civil rights movement begins in Dookie Chase in New Orleans, because Leah Chase felt like you could come together over a pot of gumbo and decide that we didn't have to stay here.
Yeah. That's so full circle. Again, ancestrally, we feed people. That is a lot of the way in which we've given to each other. And you have certainly fed so many people here in our community. So, Lisa, you have any last questions?
So one of the things in particular, I'm going to get this right, so I'm going to read this. There's a quote from Maya Angelou. There's so many quotes from Maya Angelou, but if you're going to leave a legacy, make a mark on the world that cannot be erased. That is her quote. So what are your aspirations for the Cupcake collection?
Oh, I love that quote. Actually, I heard Oprah talking about that particular quote. You know, she's kind of like a mother to Oprah, right? And so she said something to the effect of, if you change someone's life, you change their legacy. If you change their legacy, you change their community. If you change their community, you change their world. And that's what I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to be a change maker. I don't know how I'm doing it except for by faith.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a Bible verse that says that there's so much that talks about faith, right? But for me, faith is currency. It will perform for you like money. It's so many of the characteristics of faith and money are similar. You have to deposit something into the bank in order to withdraw something out.
Yeah.
And faith is the same way. You have to deposit in order to withdraw. That according to your faith, it will be unto you. And so the way that we want to make a mark on the community, I just finished writing this unrealistic prayer to God because I'm learning in my journey that you can't be a realist and a person of faith at the same time because that God doesn't fit inside the realms of what we believe is realistic. And so one of the things that I endeavor to do is to make a path for my granddaughters. And now that I have grandsons, I have to come up with a whole other thing for them. But I want to leave a legacy for my grandchildren that says, my grandmother was Mignon Francois. And I want that to matter. I want that to open doors for them. And I want the people who I'm knocking down doors for to leave their foot in another door so that my grandchildren can walk through. I'm hoping to build a building for a school that has the Mignon Francois, or the Just Mignon, a school of entrepreneurship or, business legacy. I don't know what it will be, but I have my eye on a particular little small school in Nashville, Tennessee. It's called F.H. Jenkins. And F.H. Jenkins is the only Black private school in Middle Tennessee. That's huge to me. And they've been operating in Nashville for over 125 years. I think it's more like 130 years. And people still don't know that they exist. And I wrote down this little, big auspicious goal that I wanted to erect a building for them. So that my grandchildren who come through this school right now, there's a couple of legacy builders whose grandchildren are going to the same school right now. And again, people don't know that it exists, but my goal is to build them a building. I don't know where I'm getting this money to build this, but I'm thinking it's going to cost me billions of dollars. But so that my granddaughters will be competent public speakers. Did you see that video of the 10-year-old that's when she was in kindergarten standing in front of a crowd of probably 500 or 1,000 just giving it to them in kindergarten. And that's the kind of stuff that they teach. But so that they can be confident women, spiritual titans who know that they belong to God. And that there's nothing that they can't do if only they believe. And I believe that school is a good ground for that seed to be planted. And I'm hoping to do some big things for them. And I hope to start leaving my legacy not only in other businesses that are being started because they've walked up this or hopscotched up this sidewalk, hopefully. And they felt love from the Francois family that said, you're welcome here. What I love about the Cupcake collection, and I think I want this to be part of what our legacy is too, is that it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter your social and economic status. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter what your job occupation is. You just care. Are you getting the last sweet potato cupcake? Because I really am going to be in trouble if I don't. And then I come out and say, nope, I've got some more for you. I want it to be that everybody's welcome here. And everybody has an opportunity to become whatever it is that they want to be. And I'm just holding the ladder. The more these kids come through the Cupcake collection and become what they want to be, I just want to be standing there at the bottom of the ladder saying, I've already been up there. It says go ahead. And what I'm learning in the meantime is that the visionary can't go. My friend Will Radford taught me that, you know, sometimes it's disheartening when, you know, you got all these big dreams and you're pouring so much into all these people and you're watching them just go leaps and bounds ahead.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, wait, you know, what about me? And he encouraged me one day. He said, you know, I'm learning from Moses. The visionary's job is to cast the vision.
Yeah.
Make the blueprint plain so that they can understand what they must do, so that when they start running, they don't have to pass out trying to do what you've already found out.
That's right.
And that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to leave a blueprint for so many other businesses that have never seen it done before. Because often we get a bad rap in the community that, you know, this is why I don't bring my business to a Black business. It's not necessarily that we don't want to do business well. Maybe we've never seen it. I don't have 6 generations of my grandfather did it this way. You know, my legacy found my grandfather on a plantation working in the field. In my lineage. Just inside of my lifetime. And so I just want to be a game changer in that way.
The doors of the church are open. we always, I mean, we love these conversations because it really does show the spirit of being a Black person, which is that we come together and we can have church. We come together and I always love talking to Mignon because she'll say, well, the scripture says. She always has a word that's going to tie back. We can talk about anything and she's going to tie it back. And I think that's so helpful for people. I know that in this conversation, I've been changed, and I always am every time we talk. There were a couple of messages in there for me. We're going to talk about them offline. But this is really what philanthropy is. This is really what our Changemaker series is about, is really showing the truth and holding the testimony of our people, of our community. And we're honored that you accepted the Changemaker category because it is certainly who you are. With that, I think we're done.
Thank you guys. I mean, I hope you took plenty of notes from that standpoint. You can find out more about Black Giving Back, blackgivingback.com specifically, any of the initiatives and interviews that we have at the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. Blackgiveback.com or blackgivingback.com is where you can go get information. You can find more stories. You can give to a fund. You have a fund there as well, I believe. And so there's other funds there that you can support. So other Black-led foundations that are out there, also nonprofits that are in the area. You can find out about those. We have those sort of separated out so you can see those and be a part of this legacy. You know, you always give seed to where it's good harvest, right? And so we've already seen there's good harvest here. So giving seed to this particular initiative will be a benefit to you and your family. So thank you guys for taking the time to speak with us today. This is for Lisa Swift-Young and also Kia Jarman, and then our Changemaker. You know, get it while you can. I already got my okay, so I got in there first, but thank you guys so much. And again, blackgivingback.com.